Welcome to another edition of Dr. Judy WTF. And we have once again in studio Dr. Judy Rosenberg, and I'm none other than Walt Lusk. Thanks for tuning in and thanks for listening. We have another great show today. We have some very controversial things we're going to be touching on, and we're actually going to do our first Shrink That Tune. For those of you who are old enough to remember Name That Tune, well, we're going to pick the mind map, which we're going to go over real quick, and then we're going to shrink that tune, and we're going to pick a tune every single week. And you can actually email us if you want a tune we want to shrink to info@drjudywtf.com. So, Judy, welcome back. It's great to be back. Last week we went over the first, 6 panels of the 9-panel mind map? And you want to do a quick overview of what they be?
Yeah, I do. I'm going to do this so that people can have a really great concept of what the outline of the whole mind map is.
Okay.
When we talk about the issues, they'll have a sense of where things are falling on the mind map, and we can illustrate the different points that are being brought up.
Okay.
We can analyze via the mind map.
Okay.
Okay, so panel 1 through 3, creation of the problem.
We're going to have to, guys, you're going to have to refer to our previous show because the slides aren't up this go around. We're going to have to get this together. But nonetheless, panel 1 through 3, because it's in threes, right?
Okay, so I didn't know it wasn't up. So
Yeah, it's not up.
Is it up now?
No, it's not going to be. But okay.
So
It's
that's
radio
fine.
today.
Okay, so let me describe the process. We play the matrix because the mind map is a grid of information, and this grid of information is a description of a flow of life.
Okay, flow of life.
Flow of life is that we are created, we are destroyed, and then we reintegrate, and we hopefully bump up to higher levels. We hopefully evolve. Some of us devolve.
Yes, I think more of us devolve than ever these days.
Yes. So I want to go over the entire flow of the mind map.
Okay.
If you look at the top, I don't know if it's not up, so I'll just describe it. So panel 1 is the creation process. That's exactly where the wound occurs. When I talk about the wound, I'm talking about human disconnect. Specifically, in this case, mother-infant disconnect. That's where it all starts. So when we move to the second panel, we're really talking about the reaction to the wound, which is all our reactions that we can see in the here and now today. If there's a breakup in a relationship, if somebody dies, if there's something that gets disrupted in your life, for example, if you have to move or you have to make changes, there is a disconnect, and there are reactions to the disconnect. And these reactions in the here and now are actually what I call triggers of the original wound.
Okay.
So there's the disconnect, which is the wound, starting with mother-infant disconnect, and then there is the reaction to the wound, and then there is an encoding of the message from the wound.
So there's an event, basically, that causes the wound.
Or many events.
And many events that
Right.
cement that wound.
That's right.
Okay.
Right. So panel 1 is kind of like the raw material, and panel 2 is where there's this reaction, and panel 3 is where it's encoded into the fiber of the being. And I talk a lot in my work about core beliefs, negative and positive. So when we have a wound, there's an encoding, and it's usually a negative encoding that sounds something like I'm not important, or I'm worthless.
Right, or I'm not worthy. It's a big one I know for a lot of folks.
Exactly.
We should say that you actually are in private practice.
Yes.
You're a licensed clinical psychologist.
Yes.
And marriage and family child counselor, and you are in the Los Angeles area or in the Sherman Oaks area is where your practice is. Is that correct? Okay. And so you've been using this for over 12 years, right? This is pretty much your life's work at this point.
I conceived this about 12 years ago, and I decided to use this on a micro basis. I wanted to tackle the macro of it, meaning the entire human race and how we've been fragmented in what I call isms, which are different fractioned pieces of humanity, different nations, different religions, different cultures.
And we have an article that validates that we're going to touch on in a little while.
Yes. So I decided to go micro because, after all, I'm a psychologist. I deal with people on a daily basis, and I wanted to have a system of healing the human disconnect, which then walks into my room as a symptom. So how do we know that we're disconnected from? More importantly, how do we know that we're injured because of the disconnect? And the hieroglyphics, or the clue of that disconnect, is our symptoms.
Okay,
That's
can
what
you give us
tells
some
us.
examples of very prevalent
Absolutely.
symptoms?
Yeah, very prevalent symptoms. Addictions. Addictions point to a cause of a disconnect. I call it the hole in the soul. When
Okay,
there's not
hole in the
enough
soul.
hole in the soul, when there's not enough nurturing, when there isn't enough mother-infant connection. And again, I'm going to refer back to John Bowlby and attachment theorists, people who have been studying infants from birth on and understand the phenomenon of connection, mother-infant connection, how vital that is to the mental health of a human being. And so when that connection doesn't go quite the way it should, then what happens is that the baby, who isn't really equipped to nurture him or herself, doesn't know how to pick up the pieces, so to speak. So there is a core, let's call it, the core of the self falls apart in that moment.
And you mentioned last week, we talked about a mother-daughter patients that you had.
Yes. Yes. So the symptoms can be anything from separation anxiety. It could be addiction. It could be overeating. It could be sex addiction. Could be simple as, well, it's not simple, gambling. Nothing simple. But people,
Gambling's pretty simple. You
That's
just
very
you still
simple.
gamble until you have no money, and then you still gamble.
And then, yeah, right. Yeah.
Or it's
So-
like you have a drinking problem. I have no drinking problem. I drink, I fall down, no problem.
No problem after that one. So you can see that these symptoms are really what people call the problem, but they're not the problem. They are the fallout material of the problem.
Okay, the carnage or the fallout.
Yeah.
Okay, so
yeah.
what you do is you're trying to get to the cause,
That's right.
the symptom.
That's right. Trying to get to the cause, because if, again, I talked about this last time, but if you're in symptom management mode, all you're really doing is you're putting a Band-Aid on the
Right.
situation, and you're not really dismantling the actual hurt or the wound. You're not disconnecting it so that the person has a chance to formulate another way of conceptualizing their world. So if you don't do that one, then you're just going to keep perpetuating problems. You know?
Exactly.
Right. You know, the little boy with the finger in the dike, right? There's a hole in one area, and then he plugs up that hole, and then the pressure goes somewhere else, and pretty soon there's another hole that erupts, and then he puts a finger in that one. It just keeps going like that.
And eventually he's out of fingers and toes.
Pretty much. Right. Right. And that's what we do as human beings. We keep shifting our symptoms around if we don't go to cause.
Okay, and so how is your system different in terms of addressing that?
Well, there are a lot of basics that I use. Number one, my tool is truth conversations. We tend to not go there to cause because it's just too ugly to talk about the wound. It's just too embarrassing
Yes.
to tell the truth about a mother who hurt you or a father who hurt you. Children do not want to bring this up because, after all, they are hostage to the family situation.
Yes, which actually that we have got a letter which kind of addresses this, an email
Okay.
from a lady named Susan. She was kind enough to email us and posed a question. She was adopted.
Okay.
And she writes, could there be any noticeable change or behavior in some things that happened in the first 5 months of when I was born, because I was given up for adoption when I was 5 months old, and later she didn't have a primary caregiver for the first 5 months. And you talked a lot last week about the primary caregiver.
Right.
And then, of course, she was in an orphanage and had a lot of babies, had a lot, so she imagined she didn't get that one-on-one care until later.
Right.
So her question really is, with no bond at all, or in those first 5 months, how would that potentially impact her?
Well, number one, I'd want to see what her symptoms are. So we'd have to really take a look at the, quote, damage here.
Okay.
And so I'm imagining that somebody who didn't have a primary caregiver, again, attachment theory, it's really important that that baby bond to one individual. that is the ideal situation. So if she had multiple caregivers, then this would not give her that safe and calm attachment that babies need to form a really healthy, calm, secure attachment. So I'm imagining she did not get a secure attachment. Now, babies are very malleable. So if she had then a wonderful adoptive mother who took over, many of those wounds can be healed. All of those wounds can be healed. If they couldn't be healed, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing.
Absolutely.
Right.
And I know you've had some amazing success in a pretty short period of time.
Yeah.
And by the way, if you want to call in and be part of the cause and the solution, you can call studio. Our direct number is area code 323-284-7826. That's 323-284-7826. And we just might put you on the air.
Yeah, I'm welcoming the call-ins because we can directly apply your life's wounds and your symptoms to the mind map, and I can show you exactly how to put a new lens on so that you can see clearly where the your self-perception went off. Again, when there is a wound, there is a crack in self-perception, and it's not a good one. It's not like, oh, wow, now I feel like I'm an amazing self-confident human being. It's just the opposite. When there's a disconnect, there is an opening for what I call psychological viruses or infiltrations to come in and thwart or distort.
So now we need an antivirus
perception.
program to fix it.
An anti-psychological virus.
Oh, okay.
Exactly. So, yeah, early on. So, yes, to fortify our mental health, the antivirus is unconditional love, unconditional attention, consistency, care, putting the baby first. That's a big one. Putting your infant before yourself.
Well,
that's a really tough challenge today.
Well, that brings us to an article that we're going to dive into. And we bring this article just to prove a point, not to really make a big political statement about it. And it's actually more about the individual that wrote the article and did this than actually what they're stating. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
So we got to preface this.
Yes. So what?
Well,
ahead.
there's a lady on MSNBC. Her name is Melissa Harris Perry. She has a show on a couple times a weekend. And she was actually the one, if those of you did a couple weeks ago, she wore tampon earrings to make a point with this story. And I remember seeing a little bit of a story about it, but I didn't really pay much attention to it. But she basically is the latest talking head of death worshippers, which is implying and supporting the murder of living and breathing newborn children, stating that she believes that life begins when the parents feel like life begins. In other words, there could be what some pollster called a fourth trimester abortion or a post-birth abortion. Which this is and it's okay to do that up to age 3. I mean, this is just so outrageous. Now, what's amazing is, to put this in perspective, she is a American author, political scientist, television host, liberal political commentator with a focus on African American politics. She's been a professor of science at Tulane University and also University of Chicago and Princeton, and written some books.
Okay,
so the point is,
obviously bright.
Oh yeah, she's very bright.
Okay.
But can I say demented?
Yeah, I think you can say that. Okay, first
So-
of all, yeah. Should I dive in, Walt?
Please.
Okay,
Can't wait.
Okay, so WTF is
This
going
is
on
definitely
here.
WTF is going on.
Definite WTF. Now, I don't know if you know what F stands for. You can imagine what F stands for. And in this case,
It
F
definitely stands for.
stands for. But what I mean by F is Freud. Freud's repetition principle. So if there's a wound, then that wound is going to repeat and repeat and repeat and repeat. Should I repeat that? Okay. That wound is going to repeat because the reason for the repeat in many different arenas of our life will replicate the injury because our unconscious really wants to repair the injury, but it doesn't know how to repair
Right.
the
It doesn't have the
injury.
tools or
Does
the
not, 'cause
ability
it's
to.
unconscious.
Right.
How can you repair something that you don't know is broken?
And what's scary is our unconscious is basically awake 24/7.
Yeah. So
That's a scary
first,
concept.
let's do the math, okay? Let's just go to simple math because I like to walk people through the logistics of this. Are there 4 trimesters in a pregnancy? Did I miss something? Because I've had
Yeah.
2 children, and I think I counted out 3. But then
When
again,
you read me this
I didn't get
article-
an A+ in math. So go ahead.
When you read me this article earlier, I just went, wait a minute. 4th trimester. I'm not getting this.
Yeah, you're not-
It took me a moment to realize, wait, there's only 3 for crying out loud.
Well, when I saw the article, I wasn't sure if it was serious. I didn't know if it was a Saturday Night Live kind of thing or if this was really happening.
Well, yeah, it's so outrageous that it could have been.
Right, exactly. But we're so outrageous as a human race. We are so outrageous. Why are we so outrageous? Because we're wounded, and this is what it looks like. So why would a person want to say words like, you only exist if I say you exist?
Well, what rang to me in reading this was what we talked about very briefly last week, was that childhood is a hostage situation.
Correct. Okay.
And that's your words.
That's my words.
Yeah.
Not only is it a hostage situation in terms of the actual parents, it's also a hostage situation in the sense that these imprints or psychological viruses, if you will, become ingested in us and control the motherboard, pun intended
Okay.
there, okay? They control our motherboard. So when I say be the cause, which we're going to get much more in depth about, I actually mean that we are not the cause of the outcome of the first few years of our lives. We can't be the cause. We're infants. We're sponging in impressions. We're sponging in the sense of who we are. So what we're fed about who we are is who we think we are.
So I know we talked about this a little while ago, and I've said that it's not WTF, it might be WTMF.
Yeah, like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's going on here? Let's throw this whole concept on the mind map.
Okay.
Okay, so you don't exist until I say you exist.
Correct.
Okay, so if we look at panel 1, which is the motherboard causal panel,
Okay.
then I'm playing psychological detective right now because that's all I have to work with. She said this, what happened? So I'm thinking, what happened to her that she's saying this? And I'm imagining that somewhere in her blueprint, in her
Right.
history as an infant,
infant.
she was worthless. Not worthless, but worthless.
Okay.
Okay. What is a baby? A baby is an extension of a human being.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
That person is literally somebody's genetical material.
Absolutely.
So if that person is infanticiding, is that the right word? I think infanticiding.
We're going to make it a word.
Their own infant, then that is a part of themselves that they are killing off. So think about that. So think about the concept of a human being who had some kind of an injury at cause, who now is manifesting in an intellectual framework, in a framework of having studied political science and everything
Right.
you talked about, and she can now bolster her case.
And she has a platform to do it as well.
She has a platform. I actually have one patient in my practice right now who is half African American, and she is half Caucasian, and I've diagnosed her this way. She's a racist against herself. This is a woman who hates herself.
That's a scary concept.
So, yeah. But this is not, I'm bringing her up not because of her only, but
Right.
because this is epidemic. We have people who actually hate themselves. She wants to cut the blackness out of herself. So I simply asked her, what is she doing here? Why isn't she at a plastic surgeon's office?
Well, as I
And-
mentioned, there was one major
and she-
performer that
yeah.
had that issue as well, I think, and gave drug addiction a whole new meaning, and that, of course, was Michael Jackson.
Of course. So this is not an uncommon. It's not an uncommon form of self-attack. Now, when we talk about self-attack, I talked last time about implosions and explosions.
Yes.
So people will either self-hate, they'll turn all the hate that they really want to turn against cause, the motherboard, and because they're not comfortable about it, because they can't freely let the poison out against the person who hurt that person, they then take it upon themselves to turn it back upon themselves. And that's called depression. Depression is anger turned inward.
Okay.
Okay.
And,
So
and I think
what
that's one of the
work with.
leading causes of people taking medications today is because of depression.
Absolutely right. So we need to coat our brain from our own pain, the brain coat.
Well, then you said we need to get to the main vein of the pain.
We do.
Okay.
And the main vein of the pain is unbelievably so, and not politically correctly so, but it's the truth that there's a lot of hurt that the motherboard, the mother, the primary caregiver, the primary people involved in formulating the core of that person's being inflicts on that person, whether consciously or unconsciously. And the way I put it to my patients is this. Look, if you're run over by a truck and you're missing your legs, do you care that the person really didn't mean to do it?
Well, the reality is they are legless.
That's the reality
Yes.
of it. So this is, again, I'm going back to specifically say this is not a blame. This is not a shame thing. This is not a let's bash your mother and your father and your family. This is simply a process of understanding that when we're wounded, whether deliberately or not, whether consciously or unconsciously by the primary caregiver, there is going to be an effect upon the child. Most parents don't understand the importance of attachment. Most people don't get it. They don't get that an infant needs that hugely connected skin contact, eye contact, breastfeeding for many years of our lives, for 3 years.
3? Gosh,
3
gosh, I've got
years.
2 daughters.
Well,
I wish it was 3.
breastfeeding 3 years, but
No, taking care of and maintaining and supporting and
Right.
parenthood is. I mean, I've always said raising parents is hard work.
Right. So if we have to understand that on a very core level, that's what it takes to raise a healthy human being.
Well, folks, you are listening to Dr. Judy, WTF. I'm Walt Lusk, your host, and Dr. Judy Rosenberg is here. We are here every week. You can either send us questions if you have or comments to info@drjudywtf.com, or you can call us in. We'd love to hear your perspective or questions. Our direct telephone number is area code 323-284-7826. So we, if you want, we can break a little bit here if you want, and we're going to do a Shrink That Tune. And the first tune we're going to be is one that you've selected and one that you like a lot, Because of You, from Kelly Clarkson. You want to give a little background real quick?
Yeah, okay. The mind map is called Be the Cause. Because of you. Because of what I've been saying today, which is that we are not the control panel of the outcome of the first part of our lives. We therefore are hostage to the situation that we're in, a parental family situation. So if that doesn't go right, then we get these pain songs. And Because of You is a beautiful song that illustrates what can really hurt as a result of a disconnect. So
Well, here we are, Because of You by Kelly Clarkson. And that was Kelly Clarkson, Because of You. And what we've got is the lyrics to this. And so what we're going to do is shrink that tune. Okay? And we're going to put the first set up here for those of you that want to see it. And where'd it go? Okay. So you ready, Dr. Judy?
I am ready.
All right. Shrink that tune.
All right.
Because of you, I will not make the same mistakes that you did. I will not let myself cause my heart so much misery. I will not break the way you did. You fell so hard. I've learned the hard way to never let it get that far.
Okay, good. So I want you to look at panel 1. Okay, remember the wound, the disconnect, the mother-infant disconnect, out of which the blueprint flows. So this lady obviously went through some sort of a heartache, some sort of a misery, and she is damned if she's going to make the same mistake again twice. But guess what? WTF with the Freud repetition principle. If she doesn't break that pattern, if she doesn't identify the wound and clean it out thoroughly, then she is going to make that mistake again. She's going to make the same mistakes that she did, meaning he did or the family did. This is multi-generational.
So you're basically
saying it will be repeated.
So basically history repeats itself.
Absolutely.
And the Bible even talks about that being generational.
Yeah, it's multi-generational. So she's crying out here. She's saying, oh my God, I don't want it to be multi-generational, but she knows that it's going to be, because there's nothing that she's talking about here that's saying, well, before I go out there again, I'm going to take inventory and I'm going to see what tripped up here in my life and repair that so that I don't make that mistake again.
Okay, well then we have the chorus. Because of you, I never stray too far from the sidewalk. Because of you, I've learned to play it on the safe side so I don't get hurt.
Great, and this is the crux of the therapy that I do. People do not tell the truth about their pain. They'd rather sugarcoat it. They'd rather keep mommy or daddy out of the picture, out of the problem.
Well, they will protect mom or dad.
They will always protect mom or
absolutely.
dad. And I explain this carefully, and I take a lot of time explaining it, and I'm going to explain it to people who are listening, because what we have to understand is that in order to arrive at compassion, is the mind map up there?
Well, we can put one. Yeah, all the panels
put the
up.
mind map up there, because I want you to all understand where we're going with this. Where we're going with this
here's all the panels.
Thank you very much. Okay, so where we're really going with this is into healing. We're going into panels 7, 8, 9.
Yeah, the last 3 panels are healing.
Yeah, interconnection, reconnection, and unity. And you can't get there if you sugarcoat your feelings. It's kind of like smearing this thing of love all over your pain. It's not going to work. So the mind map is a grid, it's a matrix, and it goes in a certain order.
It's like food. No matter what you do to liver, you could put sauces in it. You can doctor it up. Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
It still tastes like liver.
It doesn't matter. So what I wanna really be clear on is that this is a process. This is a process of moving through the pain to get to the compassion. And you can't get to the compassion while protecting, quote, the motherboard. Can't do it.
Okay.
Okay, it's kind of like backing it up, backing up the system, plugging it back up. So here's this woman saying, she's telling the truth. She's saying, because of you, I never stray too far from the sidewalk, i.e., I don't feel safe in the world, so I'm going to stay real close. So what happened to her? Somehow her sense of safety was affected.
Right, was impacted.
And that was a cause. Because of you, I learned to play safe.
Well, then the next line is, because of you, I find it hard to trust, not only me, but everyone around me. Because of you, I am afraid.
Perfect. There is that lens cracked, her perception cracked, so now she does not live in a safe world, so therefore she's going to generalize and live in a paranoid world so that everybody's not okay. Yeah. And as I say to my patients, paranoia covers a lot of ground. Okay. And what I mean by that is that if you live in a paranoid world, then you have this perception that you're safe, because if everybody's bad, then all you have to do is look at everybody as bad, and then you don't have to make those finer judgment calls, and then you don't have to put your heart out to anybody because everybody's bad. So, you've just solved your problem in the form of a paranoid defense mechanism. But what that does is it cuts you off from human connect, which is the healing force of human disconnect.
And would you say that view, if you will, is more prevalent today than before?
Oh,
than ever?
of course, because again, we're not mothering our children. We're not parenting our children according to the natural flow of things. So we're really creating a society of paranoia. We're really creating a society of unsafe attachment. And so the lens is cracked, and this core belief of I'm unsafe, I'm not okay, the world is not a very good place to be in. Then you put on these dark glasses, this paranoid perception that will keep you safe because you're not going to trust.
What screams to me right now, which I haven't realized before, is Edward Snowden, who of course told the world the NSA is watching us in the United States as opposed to outward. So you talk about paranoia. I mean, our own government is paranoid about us.
Well, that's the thing, Walt, is this is macro. We think that it's just micro. It stems from the micro and it goes outwards. It's
Yes.
a reverberation. It's like throwing a pebble in a pond and then you've got all of these concentric circles.
Right.
So it starts with the primary relationship, and then the core of the self, and then that gets projected out into the world, and then we've got
What we've got.
exactly.
So moving on to because of you, I lose my way, and it's not too long before you pointed out I cannot cry because I know that's weakness in your eyes.
Wow, I love that. I love this paragraph because okay, let's look at this carefully. I lose my way, meaning that I have no guidance force, meaning that my parents are not a secure people that I can trust to look to guide me, because there's inconsistency, right? If you have a compass and the compass isn't consistent, it doesn't always point north, south, east, west, and it's just turning in weird directions. There's no direction. So this person is talking about how directionless she feels. And then the worst part of it is she can't cry. Why can't she cry? Because she's crying to the wall. There's nobody there. There's no empathy there. So she can't even...
There's nobody to cry to.
There's nobody to cry to. And that's the most painful feeling in the world, is when you're hurt and there's nobody to reflect back and be there and hold your hand and look in your eyes, and then you're alone and there's nobody to cry to, because that's weakness in parents' eyes. And that's even worse, because now you've got to back up all your feelings, you've got to shove them all down, you've got to contain them, and that's where I talk about panel 6, implosions. Implodes into depression.
And there is panel 6.
Thank you.
Is that panel 6? Yes, it is.
Yes.
Okay. So that's where it all implodes.
Yeah, that's where it all implodes.
Then it's inside as opposed to exploding.
Well, she can't go outside of herself
Right.
because there's nobody there.
Okay.
There's no empathy. So she goes inside
Okay.
into that lonely place.
I force to fake a smile, a laugh every day of my life. My heart cannot possibly break when it wasn't even whole to start with.
Okay, now we're back to panel 1. It wasn't even whole to start with, the hole in the soul. It's beautiful how these songs really do describe the process. If you listen carefully to the words, she's even talking about whole to start with.
Right.
We have every right to be whole to start with. We are whole to start with. We just easily break when we're not handled with care.
And folks, we are shrinking a song here on Dr. Judy WTF. And if you want a song to be shrunk, a popular one would be best. Just send it to us at info@drjudywtf.com. I'll get it.
You got it. So I just want to say another thing about this.
Of
okay?
course. Well, we got,
I'm
but wait, there's
forced
more.
to fake. I just want to say I'm forced to fake. Okay, so that's the people out there that are people pleasers. Forced to fake because mommy needs to like us. So it doesn't matter that we're dying inside. We still have to act cute. We still have to please.
Please mommy.
So I'm forced to fake and smile and laugh every day of my life.
Okay.
To keep the bond. To keep the bond.
Okay. Keep the illusion of the bond.
Yeah.
Okay. And
There
then we
we
have
go.
the
Thank you.
chorus,
That's
which
even better.
we'll skip that. And then because of you, I find it hard to trust. not only me, but everyone around me. Because of you, I am afraid. I wanted you to die. I heard you cry every night in your sleep. I was so young, you should have known better than lean on me.
Wow. So I watched you die. So let's just take that as a metaphor. Motherboard wasn't there. Cause wasn't there. Mom wasn't there. Dad wasn't there. I watched you die, meaning wasn't there. I heard you cry, but was mom crying for the infant or for herself? So it seems to me that you should have known better than to lean on me. And this is a huge problem, is that we have parents leaning on their children, and the energy is supposed to flow the other way. It's supposed to be the child that's leaning on the parent, not the parent leaning on the child. And so this is how we crack our children. We crack up our children because we lean on them, and they don't have the strength because they need us to fortify them, not vice versa. So here's this mother crying. Well, she's dying and crying, but she's not attending to her child. She's leaning on her child.
Okay, so now, but wait, there's more. And now I cry in the middle of the night for the same damn thing. And again, the chorus. Because of you, I tried my hardest just to forget everything. Because of you, I don't know how to let anyone else in.
Okay, I try to forget everything. Denial, 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 denial. Panel 5, defense mechanisms. Let's just pretend this thing didn't happen. This is a nightmare. There's no empathy in life. I'm alone.
But what I say, I have an expression,
Yeah.
and it's a Confucianism.
Okay.
He or she who stick head in sand will get butt kicked.
I like.
Okay?
Very
Right?
good.
Would that fit?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You deny, stick your head in the sand.
Yeah.
You're gonna
Butt
get your butt kicked.
Yeah. So what's that other line?
Because of you, I tried my hardest just to forget everything. Because of you, I don't know how to let anyone else in. Because of you, I'm ashamed of my life because it's empty. Because of you, I am afraid.
Okay, so this is rigorous, honest truth. This is the kind of stuff that people will not tell their parents. They'll write it in a song, hoping that their parents are going to hear it anyway, of course, right? Like, oh, wow, I wonder why my daughter wrote that song. Okay, and that's the kind of stuff they come in.
No, they're thinking, oh my gosh, I'm the inspiration of this great hit.
Oh, yeah, that's what that's right. Wow, you're catching it fast, Walt. Okay, yeah. So because of you, I try my hardest to forget everything. Denial. Because of you, I don't know how to let anyone else in. So let me ask you something. Let me ask all of you something. If the primary caregiver, whether it be mom or dad or whoever's primary caregiver, isn't there for you, right, and doesn't show you a safe, connected world, and that's your role model for human connection, then why would anybody want to let anyone else in?
Absolutely. I mean, and the chorus, because of you, I never stray too far from the sidewalk. Because of you, I learned to play on the safe side so I don't get hurt. So we're talking walls as well, right?
Walls, defenses, burying their head in the sand, getting kicked in the butt.
Right.
Yeah.
So, folks, that was our very first Shrink That Tune, Because of You by Kelly Clarkson. If you have one, just let us know at info@drjudywtf.com. So we talk about what the Freud. So what WTF the Freud.
Okay, so let me get into why. Why
How come?
I chose that name, WTF, Freud. Let's talk about Freud for a moment. Okay, so Freud, as you know, was a psychoanalyst, and his claim to fame was really helping people to understand that there is an unconscious, there's a subconscious, and then there is a conscious. So when there is something operating on an unconscious level, then it's kind of like a blind spot. And the blind spot is something that is impossible for us to know. We don't know it. Our symptoms tell us what they are.
Okay. So, but what if we don't? Can you elaborate? Our symptoms.
Let me elaborate on that and say that when we have these symptoms, then it's almost like the unconscious is coming it's bubbling up to
Okay.
the surface, and it's communicating with you. It's saying,
It's expressing itself.
Hey, you, there's something wrong here. And if you keep covering up the something wrong here with more defense mechanisms, then you never get to grow. You never get to heal because you're burying your head in the sand. You
Okay.
get kicked in the butt, right?
Yes.
So in the Freudian repetition principle manner, you keep repeating and repeating and repeating, and what actually starts happening is that you start breaking down more and more and more. You've heard of alcoholics bottoming out. You've heard of relationships bottoming out. You've heard of the planet bottoming out, which is annihilation. So how far do we need to bottom out before we get the message that there's something wrong and that we have to fix it at a causal level rather than at the symptom level?
So are you saying that in many instances or most instances, bottoming out or hitting bottom is really the start of getting healed? Or
Sometimes.
Or do people really have to go that far?
No, they don't have to go that far. They can do it proactively. They can dismantle the problem proactively. They can come in when the problem is little. They can start working on dismantling it and going to cause when it manifests on a much smaller scale. And some people walk in when the problem is chronic and small, and some people walk in when the problem is inflamed and throbbing and ruining their life.
Yeah, but I've learned that, in order to solve a problem, you have to identify it, have to be able to know what it is.
Right.
And a lot of people don't know. They just in this repetition mode that they just go round and round and round, right?
And that's why Freud was so clever, because he understood that people don't know what it is. It's buried there, and the secret, which is that unconscious, buried impulse to protect the mother, protect that motherboard, is so operational that child would rather go symptomatic than to tell the truth of what's paining him or her.
Well, it's what they know. It's what they grew up with.
That's
It's I'm gonna use the word it's safe, is it not?
It's not
Even
safe.
though it's not safe.
It's
but
not safe, but it's more safe to have the symptom until the symptom is so exacerbated in their life that they can't live with it anymore.
Well, I always say there's another expression I have, and no surgery is painless. So, I mean, if you know you have to go through something, the sooner the better, even though you know there's going to be a lot of pain. And we
Right.
all, as human beings, want to search and seek pleasure and not pain.
Right, and what I see when I work with people and we go into the pain is that it hurts while it's happening, and then the next session I see symptom relief, which
Okay.
is what we want. We want to go into the pain. It's like going into the darkness to get to the light, going into the truth of what's paining you, telling the truth, letting out the poison, so that we can let the healing begin. And that's the work.
Well, that does take work.
It does, and it takes a lot of risk. And I have a lot of respect for people who stay with the system, because this is not an easy system. This is not a venting. I'm not a venting psychologist. Anybody can go to a therapist just to vent, and that has its place, because sometimes people just need to be heard. But what really needs to be done is to heal the wound and heal that disconnect so that it doesn't keep Freudian repeating itself.
So those of you who think you feel wounded or feel like you're stuck, let us know at info@drjudy.wtf.com. And we've got only just a few more minutes here. Why is this system, and we'll probably address this next week as well, we can start here, why do you think your system is different than other forms of therapy?
Because it's to the point, because it doesn't sugarcoat anything, because it's very, very organized, because there's this order to it that goes from identifying the problem to going right into the healing conversations, which are the truth conversations, and taking the pain that people have been carrying in symptomatic format and then translating that into what's really bothering them. Because again, it's a hieroglyphics. It's kind of like that particular symptom is just a hint to what's really going on.
Can you give us a real quick patient that came in and within like 2 or 3 sessions there was like the transformation was phenomenal?
Yeah, I had one the other day. I have a young woman who's tremendously depressed, and in her case, her mother was a control freak and controlled all of her life, controlled all of her thinking, and she wanted to be the good girl, and she wanted to comply, and she found that she was getting more and more and more and more depressed, and she just didn't even have a sense of who she was, because who she was, whatever her mother said she was, kind of like Melissa, who says, "You're an infant if I say you are.
Right.
You'll live if I say you do." And she was so depressed, and she was concerned because she has a little boy, and her son is her love of her life, and her husband is concerned because she's been upping her medication. She didn't want to go that route. And so she dared to start this kind of work, and actually the mother was so gracious and so loving that she wanted her daughter to heal. And within 3 sessions, her depression level is just going way, way down because she's saying things that she never dared to say before. She's coming out with because of this disconnect, I now feel like I'm disconnected from my husband, from my son, from the world. She's telling the truth, and this truth is opening up new ways of her perceiving the world, which is, wait a minute, maybe I'm not trapped in this double dungeon. Maybe there is some light. Maybe this perception came from back then at cause, and I'm still carrying it with me, and I don't need to carry it anymore. And there's a new way of seeing the world because I don't need that defense mechanism anymore.
So from the result of that was she's now more connected with herself,
Yeah.
her husband,
Yep.
her son, and her mother.
And her mother. Right. Right.
Wow.
And the irony is that as she lets out the poison about her mother,
Yes.
she's able to love and have more compassion for her mother. And when she's able to really free herself of this, then she'll be able to see that this was just a process. She doesn't have to kill off her mother in order for her to heal.
That's the one thing that I've learned, then, that the net result of this whole process of letting the pain out and being vulnerable is more compassion.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So the end game is not hate. The end game is to take the poison and the darkness out so there's more room for the light and unconditional love.
And that's all what it's all about, folks.
Yes.
Unconditional love.
Yes.
Yep.
The most powerful healing force and most underutilized healing force on the planet. Unconditional love. UL.
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 Okay. Unconditional love.
Yes.
And that's about it for this show, folks. Thank you so much for listening. Again, this has been Dr. Judy WTF. We are on Facebook at Dr. Judy WTF, Twitter, Dr. Judy WTF, and of course you can write Dr. Judy at drjudy@drjudywtf.com. So God bless. Unconditional love is what it's all about. Until next time.
What did you think? Good? Huh.